This is Dave, and today's big hairy idea is hard circumstances, hard choices. I watched a video last night that I can't get out of my head, but the video and the discussion that surrounded it afterwards. The video was of a congresswoman from California grilling the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. And she had looked up what the entry-level position was at Chase, and it was paying, $16.50 an hour. And she broke down like how much money that would be per year before taxes, how much after taxes. And she went through that a single woman, single mother, and in her scenario, her theoretical scenario, it was a single mother of a 6-year-old daughter, that she could not get by. She could not have a living wage going into the entry-level position like this at Chase. And she kept asking, like, what is Chase going to do about that? And the woman broke down. She went through, the congresswoman went through all of the expenditures that this mom would have. $1,600 for a one-bedroom apartment and $400 for car. And she went through all these other expenditures to show that the woman would wind up in the minus every month. And she kept saying to the CEO, so what are you going to do about this? What can you do? What would you do for this woman who is not having a living wage working at your company? And the CEO, I kept waiting for him to respond, to jump in, to say something meaningful, but he didn't. He kept saying, "Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I don't know. I'd have to look into that." You could see like his lawyer whispering in his ear, "Don't say anything. Don't say anything." And it was this very bizarre thing. But it was in this money group that I had joined. And what was interesting was there was this dialogue about it afterwards. And this one woman had jumped in and said, this was exactly my circumstance. I got pregnant as a teenager. I was a single mom. I didn't have anybody helping me. I didn't have, the father sending me money every month. I had to figure out how to get by. But unlike the woman in the hypothetical scenario who wanted to live on her own at $1,600 a month, I realized I couldn't afford that. So what did I do? I moved in with another single mother. We got a 2-bedroom place. So we each had one bedroom for ourselves and our child. And we worked opposite shifts so that we could each watch the other one's children while we were not working, and we supported each other, and we pitched in on expenses, and we made sure that we kept each other from making any stupid purchases, and we each built up our financial foundation during the course of that time we lived together until we were each able to move out and get our own apartment. And I definitely appreciated this woman's story of saying, look, taking all this responsibility upon herself. She was in difficult circumstances, so she made really difficult choices. But then what was interesting was to see was the response to her and all these people saying how insensitive she was being and not being sympathetic enough to the hypothetical woman in the congresswoman's scenario, that, saying that she has to go and make the same difficult choices that you did. And clearly what the congresswoman was going for was the scenario of saying, you know what, the whole wage structure is off. That we need to be paying people so much more because some people who get this entry-level job are not going to be able to get by on that, and therefore the entire wage structure needs to go up. Either that, or maybe we need to pay people not based on the value that they create, but based on their needs. Maybe a single person without children would get paid less than the single mother who has additional expenses. But I kept waiting for the CEO to jump in and say, you know what, this woman was in very difficult circumstances. And we didn't create those circumstances. The majority of people who work in our business who are only able to get an entry-level job, a lot of them are single without children. A lot of them might be part of 2-wage families, and they're provided for. Some of them might be single parents, but they might be getting support from the other parent, and so they might have extra money coming in every month. We can't necessarily provide for all the circumstances of everybody that comes in and be expected to have that fall on our shoulders. I kept waiting for him to say something along those lines, but he didn't. And as someone who's been writing this book on money for this past year and a half, I've been so delving into it. I really appreciated the position of this woman who had been the single mom. She now pointed out that after she got herself out of this really difficult financial circumstance, she got remarried, she built had more kids, she built this whole other family. And I appreciated that idea of saying, you know what, no, this had to be on me. Like, I had difficult circumstances. I need to figure out how to rectify that. That's not to say that businesses shouldn't pay a good wage, but to expect every business to be able to accommodate for every difficult circumstance that a staff person comes into before they came there seemed to me to be untenable. But it's just so fascinating to see this dialogue back and forth between all those people who are saying, but you're being insensitive. You're being insensitive. not to me, but to this other woman who was just talking about her own personal circumstance. Why was it being insensitive to be saying, look, when you're in a tough situation, sometimes you have to be making tough choices? The other position was, it was almost like an ode. It was like, no, this woman is owed a wage that will allow her to support herself and her daughter and live on her own and have a car and have childcare, as all these things this congresswoman had listed off. And she needs to be able to, she's owed that despite the fact that her skill level is only that which is able to get her a very entry level position. And at the same time I was watching this, I was watching these videos that Brian Johnson I've seen the last few days, and his optimize.me. He has these +1s, these like very short videos he does every day, kind of like this one. And he kept quoting different people. He was quoting Joseph Campbell and Nietzsche and Eckhart Tolle, each in these different videos, talking about the circumstances we find ourselves in our lives are exactly the circumstances we need to be in every circumstance. We should look at them almost as if we had requested them, almost as if we had laid them out and saying, this is exactly what I need right now. And the truth is, like this hypothetical woman in this congresswoman's case, my scenario is very different in the details, but I've also found myself in incredibly difficult situations, some of them incredibly difficult financial situations, as in the hypothetical case. And those necessitated me making incredibly difficult decisions. I had to make the hard choices because of the hard circumstances. But the truth is, I put myself in those hard circumstances, and I had to figure out how to get myself out. And even if you want to dream up some weird scenario where we haven't put them into it, people are born into a hard circumstance, whatever it happens to be, if you're in a difficult circumstance, you want more, you might need to make the hard choices to get yourself out. This whole line of questioning that I was seeing, the whole energy that I was getting from this congresswoman of, you, JP Morgan, you hire somebody for an entry-level position, how are you going to make sure that they can live in the neighborhood they want to, in the apartment they want to, drive the car they want to, and get by with no deficit every month? It didn't seem to be recognizing the fact that this woman got to this position of her level of education, of being a single mom, by the choices she had made. Like we all are for all of our scenarios in life. I made absolutely a product of the choices I had made. Not 100%. Clearly, I was born into certain circumstances. I was raised in certain circumstances. But so are my brother and sister, and their lives look very different from mine because we've made very different choices, despite being born in the exact same family. And so this is really on my mind right now, especially going into Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement tomorrow. It's very much a day of taking personal responsibility, of looking at the difficult circumstances you found yourself in. I'm trying to say, okay, how can I go and rectify the circumstances in my life? And while it's certainly possible to turn to others for help when you need help, it's an amazing thing to turn to others for help when you need help. To turn to others for help and say, no, I deserve this, you owe me, is not necessarily, it's not this empowering feeling. It's not the same thing as saying, turning and say, wow, can you help me? I would really appreciate your help. But really, I know that I own my circumstances, and I'm going to have to find my way out. I'm going to have to make the difficult choices that will help me get out of that scenario. So as we go into Yom Kippur, and as we go into really every day of our lives, look at the circumstances you're in. Are there any that are absolutely, you just can't handle them? You feel like they're above your head. You really wish you were not in this scenario? Is there anything you can do to get yourself out without expecting the answer to come from anyone else, without pointing a finger at anybody else? Can you take full ownership over the circumstances that you're in and say, okay, this is where I am. Clearly, I've been put here by God, the universe, anything, my choices, whatever it happens to be. Now, what can I do to get myself out? And if anybody's looking for tools on how to get themselves out, by the way, our book, The Size of Your Dreams, is filled with tools that can be helpful in this circumstance. Feel free to download a free copy. You can get one at theSizeOfYourDreams.com. You can download a free copy and help turn around whatever scenario it is in your lives that might be holding you back.